Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, I'm back.
So you sorry you're, didn't know if you did them.
Mr. Leon.
Cold here?
I
got a chill. Was it dropping the road?
Yeah.
I have it as an action. Yeah. Yeah. I have plenty of time. This is when I got.
Okay. All right, it's 6 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Please stand and we'll pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Westwood. Conley.
Here.
Daniel. Here. Steve. Ronnie. Here. Susan. Here. All right. Okay. First up, I guess Mayor Westwood gave me some great notes to go off of here. Just to address the elephant in the room, I am not Mayor Westwood. Mayor Westwood tested positive for COVID over the weekend, and he's recovering safely in isolation, as you can see him right there. He's still vertical, which is good. Fortunately, our charter and other governing documents provide for a means for our city business to continue in such conditions. I am Jody Ronning, Council President, and I will be conducting the meeting this evening. Mayor Westwood has joined us online and is available if there are questions, and he will also still be doing the mayor's comments. He will not be voting, nor will he be participating in discussion of the action items unless the chair chooses to call on him the same way we would call on any staff member, consultant, or other guest present. All right, so now that that's taken care of, as you can see, we do have a vacancy on council. We did post for it in the Carbon County News and other locations where our city normally posts openings. We did get a single letter of interest received from Doug Miller, who was one of the candidates in the most recent election. The city had heard from another Ward 1 resident who had verbally indicated an interest but did not receive a letter of interest from that individual. A follow-up call was made to confirm it had not been sent but encountered, and that it had not encountered technical difficulties. It had not, and we have that individual's blessing to move forward. So, with that part, I would like to give 3 minutes to Mr. Miller to introduce himself as an introduction, if you'd like to approach.
Thank you, Jody. As Jody mentioned, I did run for this office in November and was beaten out by some serious competition sitting up there. But I enjoyed running. I actually, the more that I got involved with the city council and some of the processes as a spectator, I realized I can be used here. I've got experience in accounting and finance, and a couple of areas that concern were the budget and the audit. And, unfortunately, or fortunately, I've been through hundreds of those, and I think my experience would allow me to help the group establish some procedures and a process. So that's what I want to do. And I also, visiting as a spectator, as a citizen, there was not a lot of unity in the group. So I want to work towards, working to the right solution and helping resolve issues in a friendly and efficient manner. So I'm looking forward to this opportunity, and about it.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we would like to open it up for public comment on the council vacancy. If anyone would like to make public comment, please feel free. Is there anyone who'd like to make public comment here? Anyone? Okay. Is there anyone online who would like to make public comment on the council vacancy? All right. At this point, we'll open, I'd like to entertain a motion to open nominations.
I second that motion.
I move to appoint Doug Miller to fill the council seat.
Now I
Vacated
second
by-
that
by-
motion.
All right. So I'm supposed to say the floor is now open for nominations, but yes, okay, so we do have that. Are there any other nominations?
Okay, I move to close nominations.
Is there a second to close the nominations?
I second.
Thank you. Okay. All right, is there any discussion?
I think you'll be a great, addition to our group.
I worked with them on the mountain.
And we worked with them before.
All right.
Perfect.
All right.
I think it would be a fabulous addition, and I think that it'll be a great addition to the team.
Okay. All right. Can I get a roll call vote?
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Keith? Yes. Ronnie?
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes.
All right. At this point, we will ask Judge Desit to come in to provide the oath of office. Council.
Very theatrical.
No, okay.
I, Doug Miller,
I, Doug Miller,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Montana,
and the Constitution of the State of Montana,
and I will discharge the duties
and I will discharge the duties
of my office
of my office
with fidelity,
with fidelity,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So if you please come up and take a seat up here. That would be wonderful. I don't know if you have a copy of the agenda or not?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, all right. All right, roll call of officers once again.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel? Yes. Keith? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes. Okay, perfect. And if there's no objection to approving both minutes of the January 9th and 23rd meeting, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of January 9th and 23rd.
I second the motion.
I do have one correction.
Okay, go.
I think it was on January 23rd in the public comment on Resolution 3638. I believe that was Jen Cap, not Jen Battle.
Oh,
Good catch.
okay,
One of those Jens.
okay.
On which one?
There's a lot of Jens around.
You got page
1-9,
two?
is that what you said?
January 23rd,
Page 2?
it's under public comment on Resolution 3638.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. So with that correction, is there any other, amendments or changes to the minutes? Okay, roll call, please.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Maroney?
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes.
And can I get a motion to approve warrants payable, please?
I move to authorize warrants payable in the amount of $848,243.06. And, if anybody's curious, I do have a list of a few things, some of the
Okay.
bigger ticket items.
Can we get
I'll
a second?
Yeah.
Okay, discussion?
So if anybody's curious, we had two CDBG grant pass-throughs. One was $172,000. The other one was $13,000. We had, $13,000 from Northwest Energy. We had $45,000, which is monthly, I believe, for Republic Services. We paid a 28 mil payment to Red Lodge Fire District, and that was to the tune of $307,000. We paid the Wilson Brothers for the stormwater project, $167,000. And then, Great West Engineering, $27,000. And the rest were all below.
Any other questions or discussion on warrants payable? Roll call, please.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Maroney?
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes.
At this point, I will turn it over to Mayor Westwood for his comments.
All right, and I apologize. First off, let me make sure you can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So first off, let's start with staff introduction. We've got Mike Maples here, who started a week ago Monday, and we're already seeing some good things. But I wanted to just give Mike a moment to stand up and kind of introduce himself to the crowd. And if there's any questions from the council, council is certainly willing to address them. And Mike, let's see how good you are at picking up that podium and moving it forward 2.5 feet so it shows up on camera. Perfect. Thank you.
My name is Mike Maples. Like you said, I started here last Monday. I came from Shoto, Montana. I was the public works director there for the last 8 years. There's a lot of similarities between Red Lodge and Shoto in that we had a lot of projects going on. Our infrastructure needed a lot of work, and very similar in the sense that we're doing projects every summer to try and bring things up to speed. We have the same kind of situation, Shoto, you guys have here. We have 2 water treatment facilities. We actually have a bigger, more complex sewer plant. We have similar situation with parks. And there we actually did our own garbage. We didn't contract that out. So a lot of overlap. You know, one of the things I think I bring to Red Lodge is I have a strong, excuse me, I have a cough right now. I have a strong background in GIS, which is mapping all the infrastructure and building a database. It works really good with Shoto, and I'd like to do the same thing here. It's a valuable tool. So, the first week, I've just been trying to be a sponge to learn. So I'm going to probably be doing that for a little while. But if anybody has any questions, you can always call me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right. On that, I'll add an additional comment that I feel funny because I'm looking at my notes and you're not seeing my face. Maybe if I hold this out, it's a little bit better. One of the changes that we've made is that the Parks Board has generally reported or had a staff member liaison that they worked with. In the past, that has been a planning director. A combination of effects, including that our planning director right now is an outsourced position. We are still using Cody Markser, and she's doing a fine job. But given that so much of what the Parks Board's asks are and getting them done actually is through Public Works, we're trying something a little bit different. And so Mike has accepted the position to be the role of being the staff designee to work with our Parks Board. So hopefully we're eliminating a layer between their recommendations and the staff. And of course, there's still a lot of that stuff that will still come to, that if it's appropriate, it'll come to council. But when it comes to just maintenance and getting things done, it'll go directly to Mike. So I think that's a step in the right direction. And then there's been a few late developments since we put out the agenda. So I just kind of want to address, I'm thinking of this as far as like just kind of, reports to council that we're supposed to. So the auditors have been here this week finishing up the audit for 2022-23, and they will be wrapping up tomorrow. So far, things are going well, and we're looking forward to getting their completed report and where we may have opportunities for improvement. So that's, again, for the fiscal year that ended last June. And so I will be having a short remote meeting with them in the morning, but Lonnie's been stirring that up, and all the reports I've got are that it is going quite well. The city has been awarded a $38K grant from the Arbor Day Foundation to be used for trees. That's thanks to Alan Best from the Sustainability Board, who's been working on that. We're still working through a lot of the details of where those are going, but a lot of that is looking at to be replacing the trees that were lost along the creek from the flooding. So big project, lots and lots and lots of trees, a bigger scale than what we've had before. We've got some money to bring in, some supervision and maintenance and stuff. So Alan Best and Mike Taylor are both heavily involved with that, and the Parks Board and Sustainability Boards are also involved there. I guess I should pause and see if there's any questions. All right, hearing none. There are several conversations that are going on with developers right now. I know one of the things that I've heard as a common theme from this council and from our community is workforce housing. There's a couple of different classes of workforce housing. There's housing that's needed for the folks that work the shops on Broadway. There's houses that are needed for the folks that work at the schools and the hospitals, et cetera. So there's quite a wide variety there. We are looking at and pursuing anything and everything we can think of. We already have, I guess the call out there is it's going to take time, but I thought I'd share some positive news just so that we can see that we're moving that direction. We've already had one private developer who wants to put in 10 units within walking distance of downtown. He has met with our building inspector and reviewed plans there. We've got him working with Cody right now. It's because there are a couple of fourplexes in that mix that requires a conditional use permit. So he's going through that process of getting that up, and he's working with haste to get that done. Unfortunately, with haste and Red Lodge building season still means that it may well be next year's building season before that happens. But that was a really positive step that I wanted to share, that everybody is collectively working for ways to make it happen. We've got another developer that we met with several years ago when I was on city council, who does what's called Section 42 housing. Basically, it is a federally subsidized construction program, and the trade-off is that they offer rent at subsidized values for folks. This is good for a lot of this is the shop, so we can still afford to buy a hamburger in town. And so they offer lower rents. The one challenge that we have with those types of builders is that land basically has no value for them. And so what they are frequently looking at is how do they get free land to build on? They don't necessarily need to own it fee simple, but how do they get land, suitable land for them to build on without having to invest in that land. I really struggle anytime the city is asked to pick winners or losers, or if the city is asked to get into the real estate business. So we are looking at some other solutions that hopefully will allow that developer to come in, but not require necessarily the city to cross that line, which is a really murky line. Some of those include working with Montana Land Trust to buy some of those pieces of land and then lease it to that developer. We also have, thinking outside of the box a little bit, we have some adjacent properties to town that several developers have come in and looked at building, but in order to do that, it would need to be annexed. And some of the larger developers are coming in and saying, you know, if this is an adjoining section of land and they get annexed into the city so that they can have city utilities and services, of course, a lot of times when we bring in subdivisions, they dedicate a certain amount of that land for parks. So if you've been up to the Spires, that's where Moran Park is. It was a big development. And then what they did is they set aside and designated a section for parks. The developers right now are saying what we want to do is we'll come in and we'll develop our development, and then we'll have this piece of land that's available for workforce housing. And so if you combine that with, well, let's have that developer lease that land over to that Section 42 housing. It's still early stages, but certainly there's a lot of possibilities for some pretty significant workforce housing, and a lot of that will probably involve the council at some point. But that's exciting enough to me that I thought I wanted to kind of mention it, share with the council, and see if there were any questions on that. All right. The pool, conversations with the pool are ongoing. I'm testing my memory here. I'm not reading it from my notes, but I believe June 1st is the targeted opening date. We'll get that real information out, but know that things are going well. There's a good plan, and so I think we're good on that. So that was kind of the ad hoc stuff. The stuff that the council had asked about that I wanted to provide updates for were specifically the Yellowstone Wildlife Sanctuary. So I met with BR, the executive director down at YWS, and I met with Public Works. This was even prior to Mike Maples coming on board. I've gone down and done 2 or 3 different tours and walkthroughs. And before we put an action in front of you, we'll get a map and explain kind of the possibilities. The short version is, with a little bit of homework, we've discovered that the needs that the city has and then the needs that that YWS have are not conflicting needs, and they actually work out quite well. Specifically, what YWS had is they have a bison yard that extends beyond the land that is officially their land, and outside of that enclosure, there's also a perimeter fence, which is also not on their land. That perimeter fence is required because they have to have a space between the enclosure and the fence. The point of confusion one was between that enclosure and the perimeter fence is some very, very critical city infrastructure, stormwater, sewer, stuff that basically isn't built on, can't be built on, there is no intent to build on it. And we were basically able to confirm that those utilities do reside outside of the bison yard, but inside the perimeter fence, which is kind of a nice thing in some ways. The second part of, I don't really want to say contention, but the second part of question was on the west side of it. There were a couple of triangles from the map you will recall looking at when we first got this that are adjacent to the recycling center and currently within the perimeter fence. and the city had wanted the sanctuary to move that fence over to the property line so that they could have that. And that was a point that the sanctuary had already conceded and said was not problematic, and it didn't require any major investment on their part. So that was kind of the two contention points, and it worked out that everybody is going to be able to get along and meet their objectives quite easily. The question and why there's not yet anything in front of the council, and I wanted to wait until we got Mike here and got his input, is that there's a couple of different mechanisms we have available. One of them is just to extend an MOU for the part where the bison yard and the boundary fence is, so that they continue using as it is, and we move the fence as it was originally discussed over to the actual property line. The second option, which the city attorney is a little more in favor of, is an actual land swap. And so the discussion that's going to go on now, I've got Mike and Dennison invited. We're going to kind of discuss those two options. The theory was, if it's going to be something that's ongoing and perpetual, the land swap was better. That was the attorney's opinion. There's also an opportunity that I think we can pick up significantly more land, and the city will fare better in a land swap rather than just getting those two little corners. The fence will come in quite a bit farther, and we'll be able to add a whole lot more additional space to that corner over there. I know this would work a lot better if you all had a map in front of you and I failed to put it in the packet. So I'm sorry about that, but we'll get it there before the future. I know we have a couple of folks, Chris specifically, you were kind of involved in those discussions previously. Do you have, I guess anybody, but Chris specifically, do you have any questions that you feel I've not addressed, or maybe that I'm still not aware of and understanding?
Oh, I think the whole land use and planning committee was involved in that, so it wasn't just me, but thanks for giving me credit.
I think you're all that's left of land use and planning.
I guess
Yeah, from last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that sound like it's addressing the concerns and questions that you guys saw when you were there? Okay. So anyway, I anticipate that after we've had a chance we didn't want to throw that at Mike his first week. So we've had some early discussions and we've looked at it. The things that will absolutely come out of it is that we will absolutely protect the city's access at any time of day or night without having to coordinate with anybody else, their ability to access that infrastructure. And fortunately, the bison yard wasn't built on top of them because that's always been part of the understanding. So I think it's a fairly simple one. We're just going to formalize what's the best mechanism to work with on that. The second task that council had tasked me with was reaching out to the county commissioners and the city of Bridger to work on the airport agreement. And so we are actively involved in negotiations to address the boundary issues as well as interlocal concerns. We are making progress. We've already instituted some temporary protocols, kind of with how we thought this was going to end up. And it turns out that we've had a couple of other things come up in the city since then that'll probably follow the same suit. So part of the discussion was, just to recap for those that were there, there is an area that was known as the airport, and there was a board that was charged with administering the airport, which is not unusual. We have that with the library board. To a certain extent, we have that with Lions Park or with the Rotaries Park and stuff, where there's a group that's responsible for that. And then there was a question about that area. And then kind of the straw that broke the camel's back is the rodeo board got really concerned that the land that they rely on for parking and to have the 4th of July rodeo, as well as other events, but that's certainly a big one for our town, was no longer going to be available for them to use for parking. And as they did their homework, they came up with that the airport board is who they needed to have an agreement with to protect that. Now, here and there, and let's not rehash that discussion, but where that left us at this point was that the airport board was, or excuse me, the Home of Champions Rodeo was kind of responsible for the land west of the airport fence up there. There was discussion to include the dog park, which wasn't included for whatever reasons, but they've offered to maintain that, again, very, very similar to Lions Park, Rotary Park. Think of it as Rodeo Park. In fact, maybe that's I hadn't had that thought before, but maybe that's what ends up becoming of that. The concern that we had is, where was the city involved in that process? So while we're working out all the other details, kind of an operating protocol that everybody's agreed to is that an applicant who wants to hold an event does indeed go approach the Home of Champions Rodeo Board, because they've been given the responsibility for that land. And until such time as they vacate that lease, or alternatively, we take it to a judge and have a judge declare that lease as not valid, that's where it still sits. By the way, I'm heavily optimistic that we're going to end up with that first option. And I'll get to that in a second. But what will happen is an applicant goes to the rodeo board. The rodeo association is going to direct that applicant to the city. They have to do our land use permit. We get to collect our monies. They're going to make sure that the insurance is on there, and that the city is listed as an insured property in addition to the airport board. So they're going to make sure all of that is on the application as it comes over. And the lease that the city wrote to the airport board basically says that if it's subleased, the airport board has to approve subleasing. And so before the airport board will approve that subleasing, they're going to make sure that the Home of Champions Rodeo has sent them to the city, that they've got a land use permit, that we've got the city's concerns addressed, and that we've collected our money from that. So that's already in place just through the process of negotiations, and kind of we know how this is going to look when it's done. Let me pause and see if there's any questions on that part. That came up today, but go ahead.
I'm
Say
sorry,
again?
is that a temporary until we get everything negotiated?
Yeah, that's a temporary, just because it takes time by nature to get this done doesn't mean the parts that we all agree on what it ought to look like when it's done, let's just make it start looking like that now, which is kind of what's happening with the airport board still operating and maintaining things up there. So this is just another step like that. And it came up today in one of the standing meetings, the case of Rotary Parks and Lions Park. There's an MOU, and theoretically Rotary Park is responsible for the scheduling and doing that. Does that mean the city shouldn't be involved? Does that mean the city shouldn't be insured, listed as an insured coverage? The answer is no. And it's kind of like, oh, look, we've already got this great temporary template that we've put in place that we can institute with all of those other things. And by the way, I think I mentioned earlier that I think what's going to happen is, I understand the Rodeo Association's concern about the longevity of that airport and their ability to exist up there. But what I think will ultimately be kind of the end result here is, and this is, I'm welcome, I mean, you guys are the ones who have to approve it, but my thinking is what we'll do is that the city will offer the Home of Champions Rodeo a separate MOU directly, taking the airport board out of it, much like we do with Lions Park or Rotary Park or some of those other things. We may well have the option of including the dog park in there, which means they'll maintain the dog park and take care of that, as well as all the additional cleanup up there of that big piece of land. And we'll go to an MOU directly with them, and they will basically vacate the lease that they have with the airport, and that gets the county and the airport board completely out of that equation. So that would be kind of part of that, wrapping it up when it's all done. Comments, questions on that part? Okay. There was a question that came up earlier about the involvement of the airport committee. My feeling was that the airport board, the airport board is a byproduct of the interlocal agreement of the city and the two cities in the county. So while I am seeking input from them, the airport board itself is not directly involved in the negotiations, although a lot of the members are the overlap. They are involved in the negotiations in their role as commissioners or mayors. There's nobody who's involved in the negotiations by virtue of they're on the airport board, because that airport board exists as a byproduct of this agreement that's being disputed. So I wanted to kind of share that. So I think what's ultimately going to end up with is we're going to tighten it up. As we get closer, I'll bring it back and get council's thoughts and inputs. Again, I've listened and watched a lot of those conversations, but I'm feeling really good that we're moving rapidly toward closure there. We've also reached out and talked to Lance, who's the engineer working on the master plan, as well as the FAA. We're coordinating when we can have some of those public meetings to come down for the master plan. So be looking forward to some information on that. And again, that's kind of in parallel because certainly we want to make sure that we have the community behind it and on board also. I think that's all I have on the airport board, unless there are any other follow-up questions. All right, Rocky Fork Inn update / Bastion properties, kind of synonyms that most people have heard. I've heard a lot of questions about what is going on, what is the status, where is it, what is the city's involvement, what are we doing? And I've spent a significant part of the last month chasing down a list of all of the different contacts and all of their different roles. Yes, the city had initiated a plan to use FEMA funds to acquire that property. That's stage 1 is acquisition. Stage 2 is the demolition and getting rid of the property. And then stage 3 is to do something next with it, AKA a city park or something that can be for the public benefit. There's some concerns because there's lots of money involved. The FEMA grant will pay for 75% of the acquisition. You cannot meet the other 25% with other federal funds. There are state funds available that will pay for half of that. So now we're down to 12.5% for that acquisition. Still working on the details of how we're going to do that, how we're going to manage that. There was a meeting today. I made a concerted push to the state FEMA folks. They meet every 2 weeks with their uppers, and that was today that they had that meeting. I've not heard a response back, but they are pushing to close that grant out within 90 days so that we can start to move forward. The pieces for the demolition have kind of already started to fall in place a little bit easier, and the park, but none of that can happen until the first part is addressed. Still some answers I don't have on it, but we've got all the right people involved. When I do hear back from those folks today, we plan on having a meeting of all the different agencies that are involved and the property owners that are involved. Right now, I think there's the biggest frustration of just ambiguity. We don't know what's going on. We haven't really heard anything. And so that's what we're working to solve. And I've gathered a lot of information. I still don't have all the final pieces, but given that it is starting to come together, I wanted to start to get that out into the public realm that yes, there really is something going on. And as soon as we get more finalized information, then we'll send that out. Let me pause for any questions on that.
Do you have a dollar amount for Bastion? Yeah.
I do not have a dollar amount. What I can say is that we just got the first award on that grant, which is a very small pittance. It's a couple of $1,000s. That is for an appraisal. And so I don't know if that's going to reimburse an appraisal that's already been done or if that's going to be a current appraisal. I do know that whenever there are land acquisitions like that, whether it be the Rocky Inn Fort property, whether it be the land at down by the sanctuary that has sewer and stuff underneath it, that the price of the property is its current value based on what's happening there and its state, not what it was back when life was wonderful. So for instance, going back to the Yellowstone Wildlife Sanctuary, if we were to sell them that land, or if we were to do a land trade, there's not a lot of value to a piece of land that you can't build on it. In fact, the only use it has is as space between two fences, which, what a convenience, is what they want to use it for, right? So, and a similar thing for Rocky Fort. The value of that land is what it is as a piece of condemned property that can't be built on. So, but I don't know what those numbers are. Did I understand the question, Chelsea?
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if that appraisal had taken place yet. That's all I wanted to know.
Dave,
Yeah, so it's, yep.
where, you may have said this, but I didn't catch it, but where would that other 12.5% come from? Or do you know?
We don't know. There is a question about it being, I believe that the plan all along has been that it has been for matching funds, in-kind services for that 12.5% matching funds. What is not known, and I've asked and not yet gotten an answer back to, does that include the in-kind services back from the beginning of the flood and just the city representation, or is that only begin to accrue at the time of acquisition? So for instance, once we have acquired the property and volunteers go down and help take down the building, if we use any city services to help in the demolition or any of that, then that can come. So that's my understanding at this point, is that's been the thinking, is that 12.5% is going to be in-kind services. I certainly hope so, because otherwise I need to figure out what it is we're supposed to come up with, how it can be met, and then come up with a plan that council will approve of to meet that.
Mayor, is there any salvage value in the materials that are there? You know, the metal roof, the logs, I know there's people out there that will bid on things like that to actually purchase the ability to go in and salvage it.
There is, but that doesn't get to count toward it. So the materials themselves are not. That was one of the questions. But it's not ours at that point. It's not ours to sell. That's the federal government's. Now, if we send the people in to take it apart, that we get credit for, but the materials we can't sell.
So when we use the federal grant money to purchase it, we won't own it? When do we own it?
Well, yeah. So yes, we will own it, but we don't get to sell what's on it to help pay for our 12.5%. And I don't know if they look at that as they bought it and that's the federal matching funds, but that specific question was asked, and that was how they answered it. Not the materials, but the labor could count as in kind. Good question though, thank you. Like I said, if there's things I haven't thought of, trust me, I'm open to anything. All right, and then the last one is just a kind of a public notice that we are posting some positions for the resort committee. There's some questions about who's there and who's appointed and which that there's some timing things that are there. Lonnie was kind enough to look up, and I've got a copy of, the minutes from 2021, 2022, a couple of different meetings where the folks were there. There is a council member appointee. We happen to have, right now, we've got a couple people, because we have somebody that was appointed when they weren't on council, and some discussion. My thinking is they're probably not excluded from being on there. They're not necessarily the council appointee, but I don't know that they're excluded from being on there. And that specifically is Chris Key. She was appointed before she was a council member, so that was separate from being a council member. We're still researching into that. So anybody who's interested, I would include, if your terms have expired, please submit a letter of interest. And I think we'll work it out in a way that everybody's happy. And I think that's all the stuff the council had requested for me to report back in on. I know it would have been shorter if I'd gotten it written down to notes and had Jody read them, but maybe more useful this way.
Thank you.
No, thank you, that's great.
Okay.
All right, if there's nothing further from me, I'll go on mute unless I'm paged.
Okay. All right. It is time for public comments. Anyone may address the council at this time on any topic within the city jurisdiction, not specifically on this agenda. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. And if you have something more or longer to say, or you'd like it to be part of the public record, you may provide Lonnie with a written copy of what you'd like to say. So, is there any public comments at this time? Anyone? Going once, twice, 3 times? Anyone online? Do we have anyone online?
Yeah, for some reason. I'm
Okay.
showing camera people.
Is there anyone online that would like to make public comment? Please let Lonnie know by,
Raising your hand.
yeah, raising your hand or turning your camera on. Anyone
Or speaking.
speaking? Anyone? Okay. Going 3 times? All right. Moving on, action items. Dave, I did have a quick question on this action item for 9A. It's appointment of a city rep to the Sustainability Board and the Parks Board. Is this from our last
Yes.
meeting where we're going to appoint Chelsea to those?
Yes, you need to do that, and we weren't allowed to do it at the last meeting because we're not allowed to take action on anything that wasn't
Okay,
posted first.
Okay, well, I will entertain a motion then to appoint Chelsea to both the Sustainability Board and the Parks Board.
I move to appoint Chelsea, the Parks Board and Sustainability Board.
I second.
I should have said council member Susan,
Thank
be
you.
more formal. Okay, is there any discussion?
I think she's already excellent.
Halfway there.
Yeah.
Okay. Roll call?
Conley?
Yep.
Daniel?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Cuban?
Me, yes, sorry.
And just as a quick note, I guess there was a notice put out for, some vacancies on those boards, and, the mayor, I guess, is going to repost those
They'll be reposted, and it wasn't for Parks Board, it was
for Sustainability Board. Okay.
and Urban Renewal
And
District,
urban renewal, okay.
and then the Resort Tech Committee is also.
Okay, so be looking for those, and if anyone is interested, please apply. Send a letter to Lonnie, or wherever you need to send it. Okay. So we're done with that. Okay, so item B, set the time and place for the hearing for the resort tax appeal. So we had to postpone this because the applicant was not available at the time that we selected before. So the mayor presented several dates to the applicant and whittled it down to March 5th or the 19th. But there is a conflict with the 19th with the resort tax meeting that same night. So right now, the date that we have available is March 5th, if we can get a quorum. If we can't get a quorum for that date, we can table it, and the mayor will go back and ask for other dates. So,
I'm okay for March 5th.
I'm good for March 5th.
I'm good for March 5th.
I will let you know in a second.
okay, Doug, are you okay
Yep,
with
I'm
March
good.
5th? Okay.
So we have a quorum.
Oh, Mr. Chris can come too.
Jody, was
I'm
that the closed
hearing.
Yes, and it would just be the discussion, the presentation of the evidence and things like that, that would be closed. Our actual vote they'd reopen the meeting for our vote, so,
I was wondering about that. I saw the
Yeah.
Zoom invite, like.
yeah. Yeah, so,
And the time still is 5:30?
is everybody okay with?
5:30 is good?
Okay, so can I get a motion to accept?
I move to set the time and place for the hearing for the tax appeal as Tuesday, March 5th at 5:30 PM.
Lonnie will second.
Any further discussion? Lonnie, roll call, please.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes.
Okay. Item C, resolution calling for an election on the question of conducting a local government review for action. So I guess I'd like to, entertain a motion on this, and then if we need to make some amendments and things like that and discuss it, we can, so.
I would move to approve Resolution 3639, calling for an election on the question of conducting a local government review, something that is required by the state.
Get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. So, were you?
Yeah, I was gonna, say a few things about this. So as Sandy mentioned, by law, we need to ask voters basically for a performance review every 10 years. The form of government we chose close to 50 years ago, is it still working for us? So if not, should we study an alternate form of government? That's basically what this is asking the voters to decide. So, we have sort of a boilerplate resolution from the state, because every municipality in the state has to do this starting this year.
Not starting this year, but yes, it's
Well,
required, but as of this year.
The process is starting right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We have
So
to
this
pass this by March 11th.
Yeah, so this will be on the June ballot to ask the voters, if we should, conduct a local government review, and, that will also have some attached funding to it. And we do have a change on the one that was in the packet, right?
Well, that, we can amend it. We had discussed having 5 commissioners and, up to $25,000 for our budget for this. And the budget will cover elections, the cost of the elections, it will cover the cost of training, including hotel rooms and things like that for them to go to. But after, I don't know if everyone had a chance to watch the YouTube video, I'll forward that to you,
Okay.
of Dan Clark's class, so you can watch it on all the steps of this. Apparently, most cities and towns that do this only ask for, 3 commissioners. And I think a lot of that has to do with, keeping the cost down, and then the fact that they feel that, sometimes it's hard to get, it's a big commitment, it's a 2-year commitment, and trying to find 5 people to actually sit on this commission might be difficult. It has to be an odd number, I think it can be up to 7, but, and then, so we need to, I guess, have a discussion about whether we want 3 or 5. So I guess we should start there, because then that will kind of affect the budget that we decide to do.
I had mentioned that I thought that 3 people investigating our form of government was a pretty small group, that I felt more comfortable with 5. This body has 6, the planning board has 7, and I know that a lot of people think that we can't pull 5 people out of our community to work on this, which would be almost a 2-year project. But the planning board is 2 years, and now it's 3 years. I find a group in this community to be a lot of volunteers. And I think that we can get 5. The thing is that if we don't get 5 applicants for the job, then we have to appoint whatever's left over. And I know there's also a budget concern, sending 3 to training versus sending 5 to training. But outside of that, I think that 5 people would be a better decision-making body than three.
Sandy, do you think that if someone doesn't apply, that then they would be willing to be appointed?
I don't think so.
So that, why?
A lot of people want to be asked to do things, and when you actually ask them, then they step forward. I notice a lot of people don't raise their hand, but if you ask them to do it, they will.
And just a point of clarification, they do have to be a resident in the city limits, and they cannot already be an elected official.
Yep. And then, I just think it's also worth noting, they will have support with city staff, that's also part of that budget. And again, there's going to be another part of this budget is marketing, public hearings, public comments, so trying to get community resources. I think the budget's just a little bit more palatable for actually getting it to be voted on and having to be able to bring that to the taxpayers and be able to say we're trying to make this as affordable of an option, but we do feel it's important to review because we've had a lot of people in the past year mention city planners and city managers, and a full day of meetings. But having a city manager, and this is how that would come about if that's truly what people want. But if it's not being presented in that light, or if they're just looking at straight up tax dollars, to me, it's okay, how can we make this affordable? How can we make this palatable? So that's my first reaction to that. And again, I think that we'll still be having people within that three to reach out to people in the community and ask for their opinions, ask for their support, and just in a smaller role, because again, a 2-year project can be very intimidating, but if someone's invited to one full day steering committee meeting or something along those lines, that's a little bit easier.
Yeah, just for a cost perspective, and I think it will be hard to find someone to, commit to this. I would be in favor of doing 3 members, and that's what, I think every municipality but 12 in the state has chosen 3 members and have gotten it done.
It was recommended from
Dan Clark.
Yep.
I mean, I agree with, 7 seems excessive, 3 makes me nervous. 5 seems like the right number, but then if you put into the budget aspect of it, that 3 seems to be the way to go. And I feel like if we have 3, the quality of the 3 and the ones who want to do it, they really are going to step up.
And they will be elected.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah, and it's, again, if this is a recommendation from Dan and other people have done it with 3, and we can cut costs in that capacity, then.
Would someone like to make a motion to amend?
I will. I move that we change the existing resolution 3639 to include 3 members instead of 5 in both places, the for and against.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? Roll call on the amendment?
Conley?
No.
Daniel? Yes. Keith?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay. So then on the other item, Mayor Westwood, I didn't see an email come back from Dan Clark we had a question on if we did a dollar amount, if that would be an addition or if it would come out of the general fund. So,
I did not get a response back on that either.
Okay, and because we don't.
I hadn't included you and Lonnie both on that.
Okay, so because of that, I would like to get a motion, to amend this to change it from a dollar amount of $25,000 to 2 mills, and 2 mills would be approximately $22,000, with the value of a mill. And the difference is that the voters will be approving for an extra 2 mills to pay for this. So it will not come out of the city's budget. It will come out of the city's budget if we go over that during this 2-year period. The way we were reading this when we wrote this, if we put the dollar amount, it would still come out of you know, extra on the taxpayer's part. But we don't have that clarification now, so, and we really need to pass it.
So we need to do it now because it becomes effective in 1 month.
Right, so,
So I would move to change the funding from 25,000 to 2 mils, which I believe is the maximum we can charge, correct?
you can go more now, they did change that, but,
So we can go higher than 2 mils.
but I
Yeah,
just
but we
don't
don't
think,
think we need to.
yeah, by changing it to 3. Well, we'll just discuss it. Can I get a second, please?
Oh, yes, a second.
Okay, now we'll discuss it. Yeah, they did change that. It used to be the maximum you could, budget was 2 mils, but they did change that, so there isn't that limit. You can, but by going to 3 commissioners, I think we'll have enough money to do the 2 mils, the 22,000, because we will have less expenses on the training side of it. But,
I do have some reservations about that, just because I think the average citizen doesn't know what 2 mils means,
yeah.
and we
Until we
have,
get the tax.
we run a risk there, but if we don't have clarification and we need to get this through, then I would be in favor of doing the 2 mils, but I would rather have the dollar amount in there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I personally would like to see it as a dollar amount, just, again, make it as understandable and palatable for folks as possible, and,
Yeah. Well, if,
but also, again, we're kind of stuck without that information.
on the flip side, I mean, if the 25,000, if we left it at 25,000 and it ended up having to come out of the general fund, it could be split up between 2 budget years. So it would be 12,500 per budget year. It wouldn't be 25,000 just out of our next budget.
Right.
But we all know how our general fund sets at the moment, so I would rather not
Yeah.
do that
And the
personally.
disadvantage to going to maybe 2.5 mils or 3 mils,
I don't think we need that.
you take 22,000, we'll
Yeah,
cover. I
on
know there's a
the-
big report that's also due at the end.
Right, the final report, yes, and there is a budget, sheet, yeah, that, a sample budget, and they recommended for a small community population under 1,000, a maximum of 17,000. A medium community, a population of approximately 10,000, a maximum of 31,000. And we're kind of right in between there, so that's kind of where we were. And in the past, the city has always budgeted the 2 mils that they will allow in the past, so that's where we can. Any more discussion? And can we get a roll call on the amendment, please?
Conley?
Yeah.
Daniel?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
All right, any more discussion on resolution number 3639? Can we get a roll call on resolution number 3639? Amended, yes, with those, included those 2 amendments.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, next, we have resolution 3632, the third amendment to the resolution to conditionally delay the disposition of all airport assets. Can I get a motion so we can discuss this?
A motion to approve resolution 3632, third amended.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Basically, if we do not pass this, I think, according to, Dennison, the main thing is that, the city would basically be assuming the liability of the airport because the interlocal agreement, ends February 14th and the dissolution of assets would technically have to start. Now, whether or not that would happen or not, it's just the fact that the liability issue goes back to the city instead of to the airport board and shared with the county commissioners, so. If anyone has any, and I think, is there any discussion on this, or we've tried to put it out far enough, so.
We'll keep trying.
I know, so,
Keep trying.
so that all of the
Yeah, I think,
work that's happening can happen, and it can go back to the Bridger City Council for approval, it can go to us for approval.
yeah, and I think that's more important, is take time and, again, have that input from all the parties, and again, it sounds like we're making headway, so.
Land Use Committee was looking at the date of May 1st and felt that we really should extend it to May 31st. We know that while the airport board is just working underneath the county, their next meeting is until May 6th. So it just, rather than go to a fourth amendment, at least if we could go till May 31st instead of May 1st as we see on our draft, we felt that if that extra time, wouldn't hurt anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it would.
Would you like to make an amendment?
I would like to make an amendment to the,
Move to-
well, it's not really, it's still one amendment, because it hasn't, it's just that somebody put that in red.
Right, but if you'd like to change it, you make a motion to change it.
I would move to change that to May 31st,
Okay,
2024.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion on amending the amendment?
No, this just eliminates them from having to call a special meeting or anything, just since their meeting falls after the May 1st. Gives a little more time. I mean, I feel like May 31st is so far out, but I'd rather, again, do it right than do it right now type thing, and make sure everything goes through.
They don't meet again until May
6th, the airport board.
Airport board.
Don't they meet monthly?
That's when they set their meeting, when I was at the last meeting. They set it for May 6th. One of their members isn't even in town, he has to Zoom in on the meetings. And I think that was set after he gets back. And that's why they set it for May 6th.
But, no, I mean, that seems solid,
I know.
so.
Any other discussion on that amendment? Can I get a roll call on changing the date to May 31st?
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Any more discussion on the resolution number 3632?
The only thing I noticed is in the first whereas,
Mm-hmm.
it says, and to discuss the isn't it finalization of disposition of assets? Does that matter? I mean,
It's been like that since
since the beginning,
so all I changed was the date. So-
it seems the wrong word for that,
Okay.
but, okay, fine.
Can we get a roll call on the third amendment?
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. If there's any correspondence, it's in the packet. So, other council business, public health and safety report.
Public health and safety, we discussed the ice on the.
Point of order,
Yes, sorry?
did you skip over correspondence?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed
didn't.
it.
I said it was in the packet if we had any. Did you get some correspondence that wasn't in the packet? Nope. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we discussed the ice on the corner ramp, off of Broadway there. Tom Kuntz and, the police chief was also at these meetings, and he said it's because of when MDT did the change in the highway and then created those weird corner berms, that the water collects and it makes, the ramp, little ice rink, yeah. And they have done some sanding on them, and I'm thinking that maybe I was going to write a letter to the editor and ask the people who have businesses on the corner to try to make sure that those ramps are clear of snow that don't melt and become ice on the ramps. But apparently there's nothing we can do with a design flaw. We discussed using the resort tax for police and fire, EMS, and finalized that we would put together, the committee would put together a public safety survey with the idea that we want to put a measure on the ballot that would allow resort tax to be used for police and fire, even if only for the summer months when our population in town doubles. This would help prevent a decrease in fire and EMS and police services due to a lack of funds in the general fund. So, but any use of resort tax for that type of thing would have to go to the voters. So we thought we would do a survey and see if people would be open to that. We've been discussing crisis management with the big 30 below that we went through. And the thing that we came up with is within the city, it apparently falls to Serena, who is the county DES coordinator. What would happen if we had a citywide electrical outage during one of these cold snaps? Who evacuates citizens and to where? Fire department, the police department, the sheriff's department would all get together for the evacuation. The to where, Tom Kuntz said that the designated evacuation site is the Civic Center. So then the next question was posed was whether the generator is capable of heating it, and if so, for how long. So I did send an email to Serena to ask those questions, hadn't got an answer back. So we thought that it was important that we at least investigate crisis management. Addressing, here's an interesting one. In June of 2016, an ordinance 926 was passed to change the addressing of our numbered streets. Google Maps, we all know, can't find anything in Red Lodge because we don't have a center point. So in 2016, they had a public naming contest and decided that 11th Street would be named Moran Avenue, and then we would have one north, First Street North, First Street South.
That was Maurice.
Yeah.
Is it? I saw Moran in there, so maybe that was one of the, anyway, so then it would be First Street North, First Street South, and on down, as opposed to 11th Street being our central street here. That was all approved. The Public Works had a budget of $30,000 to do this, but at the time, they decided not to. It truly affects those homes that are actually facing a numbered street because they would have to change their addresses. But everybody on the avenues, it would not make any difference. But obviously, both the police chief and the fire chief said it would be a good thing for emergency services, not to mention everyone using Google Maps would be able to find anything, including FedEx and UPS. Additionally, when MDT resurfaced Broadway, they were supposed to have the street signs say Broadway Avenue North and Broadway Avenue South, and they neglected to do that, so they just say Broadway Avenue. So it already has a problem. There's confusion in our addressing. So the question really came is the city going to enforce this ordinance, or are we going to throw this ordinance out? Are we going to do the addressing, or are we not going to do the addressing? So the city council.
We still have the $30,000.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
It's been budgeted every year since then.
Is it really?
And
But it might be a little more now.
40,000 is what we
Yeah.
budgeted.
So with that, we are going to, Public Works is going to write a resolution for council to vote on to decide if we want to move forward with that or not.
But thanks for introducing the topic.
Sorry.
We'll be talking about it again next meeting.
And the last topic was fireworks. They're still illegal in the city limits, but legal in the county and the state. We all know they happen whether they're legal or illegal. Mayor Dave said that he would put up the no fireworks in the city signs to cover any potential liability to the city. The city would have no liability were it legal. An amendment to Ordinance 936 was presented to the City Council in 2023 and apparently failed, only because I didn't find a signed ordinance online.
We didn't vote for it. It was never up for
It was never up
discussion.
for
It
discussion.
never made it.
Oh, it never made it that far.
No.
And basically what it said was that fireworks were allowed in the city limits from 9 p.m. to midnight on the 4th of July only. And that was the big change that I could see in that. And I don't know if we want to continue to pursue it. The mayor thought that it would reduce our liability if we said it were legal, because it is legal in the state.
Maybe can you repeat that ordinance number?
936.
So we did discuss, actually putting it up to the voters to decide,
Yes.
so that it's not up to us, so.
So another thing that we might consider putting on the ballot.
Obviously, that wouldn't happen by this 4th of July, hence the mayor is going to put up signs.
That was it. Our hour was up.
Okay, all right, admin and finance, resolution 3640, authorized to submit CDBG planning grant application discussion.
So we talked about, there's a new CDBG grant application where we have been asked by the Red Lodge Area Community Foundation. I see some AmeriCorps visitors here in the room. I see some foundation folks. Applying to the Montana Department of Commerce for some financial assistance from the Community Block Grant, the CDBG. This program is to help prepare a housing study for eligible properties within the Urban Renewal District for potential workforce housing. So it'd be a study on different land in the area. Essentially, this would be a pass-through through to the foundation. We did speak with Lonnie and Danae about what kind of work that puts on them, and they both said that really doesn't add too much additional work on their behalf, because it was made a comment of if we would do any sort of administrative fee, but from city staff, they don't feel that that is necessary, and we'd rather pass the goodwill than pass on fees. So, that is up right now, and again, just for discussion, be happy to share that. It is a matching fund that the foundation would be taking over for that housing study, and again, be working with some good folks here in the area. So that would help with increasing low-income housing and affordable housing in the area.
Any questions?
And this will have to come up for action.
Yeah, it'll be action
Yep.
next time, so I just want to make sure, for our goal of having things up for discussion before we vote.
Did anybody from,
Do you have to say anything?
Yeah.
Foundation folks? See one guy who looks like.
Just real quick, Brad,
Hey,
Program
Brad.
Director
Hey, Brad.
for the Community Foundation. Accompanying the request was also a set of,
Letter?
there's the three big asks that we had in there was prioritize housing, accumulate resources in the TIF pool,
Yep.
and then create a scoring mechanism with housing appropriately weighted before you approve projects. So
Sure.
that was our consensus from the Workforce Housing Steering Committee. And then at the end, it's just requesting that at your next meeting, I guess, that you advance the CDBG block grant.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Any more discussion?
Just one thing on that, one thing with the Urban Renewal District at the moment, again, funds have not been identified at this point. Planning Board is very involved, and that has been a part of some of our discussions, is how we create that criteria and what those priorities would be. Another piece with that is a lot of that's been put on hold because the planning director was also a big functionality piece of that. So good news is it buys you time, and that is a part of the discussion, so.
Okay. Business registration and liquor license discussion.
Did we identify somebody for that?
No, but that's okay. Basically, what it boils down to, there was a Senate bill that was passed that basically said if the state is charging for a license, the city cannot charge a separate fee as part of their business registration.
Right there.
Thank you. Any power to require additional licensing when the state is the original issuer of the license.
Yep.
Now, most of that we get away with because we, do business registrations and not business licenses. And it says that in our ordinance, it says that in our fees all the way down. The only issue we're running into is that for our restaurants, we are categorizing the business registration, but we're tacking on an extra fee for the sale of liquor. So that's kind of, it's putting us in a position that is probably contrary to that Senate bill. So we will be working as a group to reorganize our fees for our business registration so that liquor licenses are not charged separately. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and on a whole, just overviewing, making sure that the language is clean throughout ordinances as well as those licensing documents. And if there's any additional information we need for licensing, for business licenses, that that's included. So it's, this is kind of like the poking point to make sure that we clean up how some of that language is to be sure that we are compliant with the state.
So, be looking for that, probably not this next meeting, but, it will be done before we send out our, renewals for registration.
And that, it wasn't just, alcohol.
Yeah, it was
sales, right? It
also,
was, we were looking at a bunch of different things to clean up, to make them,
Right,
In the ordinance.
compliant and,
yes,
yeah.
yes. So, okay, council rules and procedures, we didn't really get to that at our meeting because we had all this other stuff we were talking about. Please, we did have some resolutions, that had been passed recently that have not been updated in our council rules and procedures. So, admin and finance will be, updating those on our Google Drive so that we have a clean council rules and procedures to work with when we're discussing any changes for the future. So that's kind of where we're at on that. So please, you know, if you have any input or want any, you know, changes to it, you know, let us know. The main things that we've been talking about, were who appoints the committees, making sure things are the same across the board, because there's some ordinances out there that are in conflict with our council rules and procedures, or vice versa. So we want to make sure everything, lines up, including when, we can submit our supporting documents or ask on the agenda to Lonnie. There's like 2 different times in different areas. So right now, please, if you have something to go on the agenda or in the packet, noon on Thursday is what we're shooting for. So she has an opportunity and the mayor has an opportunity to get the agenda going, so.
And submit them all to you.
Yeah, and submit them all to me. So, is there any more discussion on that? That's just kind of where we're at.
yeah, and the 2 resolutions that need cleanup, I have those written down. Okay.
Okay. All right, land use and planning.
Of course, we discussed the airport dissolution of assets, moving it to May 31st, or recommending that, so I thank everyone. Planning board priorities, this planning board had a list of 17 items that they felt were, topics that the planning board needed to address. All the members of the planning board rated them 1 to 17.
Sandy, point of clarification, are you talking about the planning board or the land use and planning?
I'm talking about the planning board that
It's-
submitted.
Under land use and planning,
It's
planning
the-
board priorities discussion
Okay,
item.
okay, so
Yeah.
because we had, when I was
Yeah.
on land use and
It's
planning, we
land
had
use
the
and
same.
planning, but the planning board
Okay.
itself has their own priority list that they have been working on.
Thank you for clarifying for me.
Yeah, and the, land use and planning standing committee went through those, 17 items, and felt that 17 was way over the top, number 1. And number 2, that they weren't exactly in the order we would recommend. So rather than, put them in any kind of order for you guys, we thought it would be something that we would need to discuss. I mean, we know that the downtown plan and the growth policy are going to be done this year. There's a grant through Great West to do those. Growth policy has to be done every 5 years. The downtown plan does not, but what we have is very old. They wanted to address accessory dwelling units, the structure and all of that. We thought that that was probably a good discussion, since we are having ADUs come into the planning board. The state has changed their zoning regulations, and as such, we need to go through our entire zoning, document and make sure that we're in compliance. And Great West is going to help with that, but that still needs to be addressed by the planning board. some of the things in here, has to be done by state, which is the marijuana cultivation. We're supposed to identify an area for cultivation of marijuana
In
for
the city
commercial. That's the way it says it, and I know the planning board has hashed this over. Ooh, wrong. And could not come up with some area that we thought was really good, so I think that we're gonna have to do some creative wording in the zoning to say that within our city limits, which is a very small city limit, we don't have a place for that.
Does every, municipality have to do that?
That's what we're told. We were
With
told
the
that by our
state.
planning director, yeah.
Okay.
I guess I would like to see where that is, because
Yeah.
cultivating is considered agriculture.
Agriculture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, in the city limits, I'm just very,
Where is the ag? Well,
Well,
we do
there's
have a
flower
flower.
growers are indoors.
Yeah,
It would be-
yeah,
It would
but-
be an
Like
indoor
a thing at, like
growing,
is in Bear Creek.
like
but
at Bear Creek or something.
I guess I would like to see that in the state law that says we have to do that.
And that's something they need to really look at,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know, on their own. Urban camping and RV is also coming to be a huge problem. Everybody knows Bozeman has a problem with urban camping, and that's something that the planning board is really need to look at. We have a lot of RVs that sit on our streets for months and months with their electrical cords over the sidewalks, and so that needs to really be tightened
Well,
up.
we have an ordinance in place already for
We do.
that.
We
It just
do.
needs to be enforced.
Yeah, and we need to look on the urban camping, like campgrounds, camping on city-owned land, or something.
There's already an ordinance in place that doesn't allow that. So it just needs to be
But
enforced.
Boise lost a court case by not allowing camping for people that didn't have any other place to go. So there was a court case that really,
That's in another state.
Great.
Like,
and they lost in federal court
okay.
against, I forgot which,
Do you have any copies of that so we can read?
I do. I'll send that out to
So-
you guys.
Appreciate that.
I'll send that out to you guys.
So I guess I'd like to go through and, maybe just start discussing these more one-on-one on whether or not we feel as a council that it's a priority.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot on here.
I know there is,
Yeah.
but by the time you get to the bottom of 17, I'll be like, I'd rather
Asleep.
I'd rather just like start at the top,
Well,
things that we
Does
actually,
everybody have this?
No.
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 Okay, because I thought that was included.
I thought it was, I guess, it was in the end.
Let me take out the ones that we felt that the planning board did not need to look at.
Okay.
One is revisiting the outdoor advertising that failed in city council last year. Another one was revisiting short-term rentals that failed in city council last year.
Okay.
And I know they spent a lot of time and energy on those two, but to revisit them doesn't make sense to me at this point when we have growth policy and ADU and a lot of other things that we really need to get to. The allowed uses table, they want to go through that, but they also have a prohibited use list. To me, those are the same thing, allowed uses and prohibited. Why not just go with the prohibited list and not do the allowed uses? But
That makes sense.
it seems to me it should be one or the other, not both. Wireless communication, they wanted to review the wireless communication facility zone. They wanted
What
to,
is that?
Because,
I have no,
Towers.
the towers.
is it the towers? 'Cause
Yeah.
we were,
Do we have any in the city limits?
not sure.
I don't think within city limits, but in case someone were to want to, it's that,
Okay.
it's that proactive planning,
Okay.
where if
Okay.
someone were to approach,
Well, that was our wonder,
Yeah.
like, did this get placed on here as a concern because it has been addressed, or was it just something that they were brainstorming that could be possible in future?
Sandy, would you have any
It would be
insight on
helpful
that?
to have the planning board here. I know that there's a section in zoning about wireless communication, and that was put in, I think, 2 zoning changes, so like
Yeah.
maybe 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
with the help of Maureen, who actually knows something about wireless communications, which we don't really seem to have an expert on that to help us. So because it's not a pressing issue and there are so many others that are,
Yeah, absolutely.
it seemed that with the 17, 6 of them aren't really need to do
Right.
right now.
Yeah.
Sexually oriented businesses might end up being on the to-do list. Right now, the only location for a sexually oriented business, which we're required to have a location for, is Berkshire Hathaway.
It's a great spot for it.
On the corner.
Close down, you know?
Yeah. So I think that the zoning is probably fine for that. And another thing they had on here, which is citywide noise level reviews. Citywide noise level review. And I have no idea what that is. We already have
A noise ordinance.
a noise
Yeah.
ordinance that does a fine job. I don't know why that was included.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that has to do with this.
Okay, so I think everybody agrees on the downtown plan and the growth policy,
Yeah.
Put those on.
that we have to do that,
Yeah.
reviewing the state regulations
Mhm.
to make sure our zoning is in
And in
compliance.
fact, I think we moved the review state regulations almost to the top, because I feel like all of the other ones kind of fall into place once you
Yeah.
understand what our state regulations are and to be in
Know what you
compliance.
can do before you
Yeah.
write it out to do it, you know? That makes sense to me.
And just so everybody knows, we're doing this because the planning board was asking for direction from city
Mhm.
council, so they don't spend a lot of time on something that will be voted down by city council,
I think this is great.
Mhm.
so.
So we would do the review of state regs as number one, number two, growth policy as it's required, downtown plan, because we have a grant for it. Fourth, I'm kind of, one of the things I had on here was workforce housing. What is the role of the Planning and Zoning Commission? And I think that that would be good for a discussion.
Yeah.
I don't know where that's gonna go. The state has now, and I don't know if it's a requirement or not, we discussed this at the meeting, that the minimum lot size should be changed for building to 2,500 square feet.
Oh.
Well,
Currently, it's 5,000 square feet in the city limits.
State review, I think she said the state
She said the state
rate has changed it.
changed it to 2,500 square feet, so that's kind of an interesting one, because I know of at least one lot here in town that is not, doesn't meet our current 5,000 square feet, and is not buildable because of that. There are regulations in zoning that says that if the house burns down on a lot less than 5,000 square feet, they can rebuild. But this is a vacant lot, or I'm wondering if this means that you can further subdivide a 6250 lot, like all the miners did.
I think it also means that you could actually start doing higher density,
Higher
more
density.
R4, R3. Like, that would change the zoning code dramatically, and I think.
Well, and
that
I
could
think
be-
that where, up here, it also said there's a multi-dwelling, multiplex clarification,
Yeah.
and that kind of, I felt like some of these can be
Oh, yeah.
into one.
And I was saying, I think with a lot of the overlap on these.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that's state regulations, I mean, those all kind of fall under, I mean, if the state regulations have changed, then we'll have to change.
So I'm gonna do the minimum lot size, as review of state regs.
Yeah,
So that can go together.
otherwise, I mean, I think our fire department might have something to say.
You think?
So, if it's not mandated by the state, that's the reason why it's 5,000 feet
And,
now.
and we also have 6-foot setbacks on the sides,
Yeah,
so now we have a very narrow, depending on the way they cut the lot.
Mhm.
The airport master plan is going to be coming in front of the planning board, I suppose. It was on their list. And I'm not sure what the planning board has to do with the airport master plan.
Unless they're thinking about how it might have to be rezoned for the map, if that would be at all thing.
it's already zoned airport.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, I know,
But the map would have to be changed. The zoning map would have to conform to the new, okay,
2024 review impact.
yeah.
yeah, that's the only reason I
So
can see it being
I
on
would
there.
say that the airport master plan, which we probably isn't gonna come out in this next year,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of work to be done on that. So I'm actually putting that off of there. I'm gonna try to think of this list as something in the next year. And I don't see that that's gonna happen.
So if anybody has a different opinion on any of this, please speak up. This is now
Yeah.
your opportunity too, so.
Procedure for building on city-owned land, I found this became, to me, a problem when the observatory had a resolution of city council describing it as one way, and then it went immediately to building. It never went through, the planning board. And I think we need a procedure for building on city-owned land. For instance, if somebody outside of the city is gonna build, they should be fully funded prior to breaking ground, as opposed to having half-finished buildings. It should go through the planning board and thoroughly vetted. And right now, it's not addressed at all in zoning,
So,
building on city-owned land.
including like the parks, if we decide to do, you know, we,
A permanent building, a bathroom,
right, or a gazebo type thing, or a cover for the ice rink.
and the concept there is that even though you have an MOU for that group, those MOUs, are good for 5 years and can be canceled within 30 days on either side. So if somebody starts a project and doesn't have the funds to finish it, and then after 30 days or a year, they say, you know, we can't finish this, so we're gonna cancel our MOU, and you have now an unfinished building, and the city is now responsible for it.
Question for you, Sandy, just because I think you'll probably know better than most. In terms of the conditional use permit, would it have the ability to highlight those kinds of regulations?
Absolutely.
Yep, so essentially, if you want to have those protocols already in place, that can be included in these conditional uses with a follow-up plan for our city staffer. Perfect, okay.
Conditional use and a design review.
Then would it go to council for approval, or is it just planning board?
It would be planning board.
Okay.
The city council would have to pass a resolution that this is something that they like,
Okay,
send it to the planning board at that point. The planning board then would thoroughly vet the project, including all the plans, everything about the plan, make sure that it's ready to go. And then once they approve it, then the building department can take over. The problem is it went from a resolution that was vague to the building department with no oversight. So I've been, as, you know, even though Dave was saying, don't use city-owned land for workforce housing, there's always a possibility that we could have some workforce housing leasing city-owned land. And then again, we've got building on city-owned land. So if we're gonna build on city-owned land, the building department, everybody should have an eyeball on that one. So that was on my list, it was not on their list, but I would like to include that on the list as well. The mayor would also like the planning and zoning commission to look at annexation. I don't think they ever have.
I think, I agree, I think that is, something that we definitely need to look at. We have 2 subdivisions that we've extended city sewer to, and it was always, out there that once it became built out a certain amount, they couldn't protest being annexed in. But we've never done a cost analysis of that, of what it would cost, you know, if we have to bring city water up there, and if we have to plow their roads now, that type of thing. So I do agree. I think that should be a priority.
So I'm gonna put that as 4, as the annex, and procedure for building on city-owned land 5.
I think it'd be nice definitely to have something, a procedure in place for that, for the future.
Just a procedure.
Yeah,
Exactly.
policy and procedure that's followed.
Now, the ADU, I know that they're going to address one way or another, and I think that maybe that needs to be definitely on this list. I mean, I think that they can do it in any order they want, even though, the growth policy downtown plan isn't gonna come in front of them in the next 3 months. Probably not for the next year, so they will be working on other things on this list, especially as they come up, but the
Right.
ADUs are really important, especially if we're gonna look at minimum lot size. Although an ADU is different from minimum lot size, it's in addition to another house on one parcel. The minimum lot size is something on a minimum lot. But I think that we should, put that up there as well.
So Sandy, when you say looking at ADUs, what are they looking at with ADUs? Size, location,
What they have here
definition, expansion?
is the dwelling, the structure definition. There was something in front of the planning, zoning, someone wanted to build an ADU on their lot, so, and that's fine. But they wanted to make it 2-story so that there was actually 2 ADUs. Cool. So that they could rent out 2. Now we have a property that is for 3 dwellings. And the zoning only allows for 2.
Gotcha.
So that was where we kind of got into trouble, that dwellings, we just need some really good definitions for ADUs. That when it says accessory dwelling unit, it's a unit, not units.
Gotcha.
And so that needs to be on their list.
Sandy, can I
Yeah.
make a recommendation?
Please.
When we looked at this for land use and planning, we weren't doing the planning board, but we were doing our own priorities.
Yeah.
We did A, B, and C priorities, and so rather than having to like decide which one is most important and second most,
Like that,
just
yeah.
do A's, B's, and C's.
Yeah.
C's not being very important, A's being like, let's deal with these
Right.
this year, and if we have time, let's
And
try to
that's
get C's.
similar to what, Dave had suggested, was like, council absolutely will entertain you going over this. Council will, you know, agree to look at this, it sounds like, yeah, whatever, you know, and then council, you know, don't bother. They probably won't pass.
It'd be
council.
nice. It'd be nice, but you're probably not gonna have time to
Say
do
goodbye.
it.
If you're bored.
If you're bored.
Yeah.
Why don't I send out the list for
That'd be-
everybody?
that'd be
That's
awesome.
great.
That'd be
Some
great.
recommendations, and then we can group them in A, B's, and C's. The planning, board is not meeting tomorrow night, so they don't meet for another 2 weeks.
Cool.
And
That'd be
so
great.
I think that we're fine with that, and I thought that there might be a conditional use permit in front of them anyway, which will take up some time. They don't have extra time after some of those types of
And,
things.
and I personally would like to see where it's saying that we have to provide urban camping,
Yeah.
and where the other one,
And I will send that
I
out,
like
I will send
I
out the
just-
Boise,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
why they felt, why,
I'm-
why, yeah.
I mean, at the same time, I guess I'm kind of
I was
like,
kind of torn on what the court's decision was and why,
well, I just, yeah.
but, there you have it. That's what they had.
Yeah, I think a lot of this will come in with that legal piece too.
Yeah.
But if there's anything that's available to us now that they're trying to make these suggestions out the gate, and then I
We
think
just
that'd be
wanna get
important that we
ahead
get
of
to see it. Yeah, exactly. That'd be good for us to see it.
Yeah.
So that way, if it turns out like, oh no, that didn't actually happen, or that was on the ballot and it did happen,
Yeah,
or.
and the marijuana, the cultivation, because to me,
Yeah.
that's an egg industry,
And
and
I
I
will-
don't,
I will
I'm
send that
really
out
kinda
to
confused, but-
require ag industry
yeah,
in
the
a town that
cultivation,
isn't zoned for that,
right, yeah.
so.
I mean, it's one thing,
It's more like a county thing to me, but.
yeah, yeah,
Don't.
exactly. I mean, I can see where the
they got
county
it,
would
but-
have
Yeah.
to provide that, you know, for sure.
Okay, and we did have
Agriculture.
Jeremy Battles there, so we talked to him about the, URD resolution, maybe tighten it up. So there were lots of discussions on how to handle it, they're still in the beginning stages, and we kind of agreed that they were going to go ahead and set up their own procedures, run it past land use and planning, run it past the city council. They have talked about a point system, they have talked about having certain amount of money in reserve in case they did get an application for really big.
Right.
And so, that was it was good that Jeremy was there. We had land use / event applications. The mayor.
Can I go back to the urban renewal?
Yeah.
First?
Yeah.
It has been brought up a couple times that should we, as council, because we can do this, put a moratorium on applications for the urban renewal district funds until, number one, we know how much we have in there. And, number two, until, you know, maybe give it a year of accumulating, or 2 years even, so that we can have time to come up with a point system, know, you know, if we are going to have, workforce housing is our number one priority for that district. If we have, you know, give those plans a chance to come to fruition.
Yep, take shape.
So, you know, that would be up to council to do that, if we do wanna take that type of step.
And they're leaning in that direction.
Mhm.
They have an idea that it might be about 100,000 this year.
Okay.
And I know we were, as, in the committee, talking about holding 200,000,
Before you.
so that,
Yeah.
and only issuing grants, URD grants after that 200.
Yeah, and I think that, that's a really good, I think before we do any sort of granting out money, there needs to be a budget and a priority in the criteria. Otherwise, yeah, it's just wasting it, in my mind.
And remember, the Urban Renewal District, I believe, is federal, and it's to address areas of blight.
I don't believe it, but I'm not.
But the concept is that you have an area in town with old buildings that are decrepit and need to be repaired. So that's got to be one of their priorities.
It is, it's just not the number one.
It's not our number one.
When we wrote it, the
Yeah,
plan, it was not, our number one priority was workforce housing.
housing.
And that's it, it's to improve a district by taking old decrepit spaces, turn them into wonderful, beautiful new things,
Yeah, like
And-
workforce
or-
housing.
like workforce housing with nice, pretty buildings or pretty trees eventually, that kind of thing.
So,
They also discussed maybe holding applications, only asking for applications once a year, and then reviewing them all at the same time. Which, instead of, you know, having an application in April, that you dole out money, and then you get a great one in July, that you wish that you hadn't granted out the other money. So, they're working on that, and I think that we do need to have somebody on that committee,
Yeah, you did recommend.
somebody from the planning board to be on the URD committee.
So she wants planning board.
but we as council can also move forward if we want to.
Yeah.
By putting some type of moratorium on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, if you don't wanna do that, we don't have to, but,
Oh, they don't have any money yet.
okay. But they have had an application.
They have had an application, but they don't have any money.
Out of curiosity, has there been any word of when that money, like what amount that will be discovered, like when
No.
we're supposed to hear?
There was an email that Jeremy had sent out, and I haven't had time to reach out to the Department of Revenue
Oh, okay.
to find
Yeah.
out on that.
I'm curious, I'm just curious.
Make a phone call.
But we'll get that figured out, and I'm sure Dave will pass that along.
Awesome.
And we had a fairly short discussion on land use or event applications. Some events might or might not actually have use of city-owned land, and he wanted to see that there was a checkbox on that application. He wanted us to look at recovery fees after somebody did use one of the city-owned land pieces, whether or not they're gonna be charging resort tax, whether they're gonna charge for the event or not charge for the event, and even to the point that maybe the city could sponsor an event and cover some of those. And that's it.
Public Works.
Wait, okay,
sorry.
For tonight?
Yeah, so
I
Public
knew
Works,
they was
That was
gonna-
just,
we obviously got to meet Mike, get to hear about all of his wonderful experience. Really, that's going to kind of help us kick off into directions of what we're going to be taking on and doing. So, big thing was just kind of getting to know him, where his expertise, what kind of projects he's going to be working on, and then how we're going to be able to assist with that. We also had a lovely presentation from Alan Best about not just the trees, but other grant opportunities coming into our area. Sounds like there's a lot of research that needs to get done, so we're gonna start compiling a little bit of a list to figure out, first, he's gonna send us some information so we can really look at it and make sure that this is something we'd like to move forward with and feel comfortable moving forward with. Because it sounds like it's a fairly quick turnaround, but not too, it sounded a lot faster at first, yeah. But there are a lot of moving parts. So essentially, it would be a grant for solar fields out by the swamps.
microgrids.
Microgrids, yes, microgrids. So self-contained microgrids that would generate solar power and be stowed in batteries. So that way our sewer systems and those pumps, right, I'm gonna get you a lot, We'll be operating even during power outages or failure. And then also the pump down at Waterworks would have that. With that, it looks like it would take 2 acres of land near the swamps to do so, or the lagoons. Shouldn't call them the swamps over and over again.
The STs.
Yeah. And then it would be just over an acre down below. In terms of the financial benefit, it says about $66,000 a year goes to running the electrical out of the lagoons, and that would be an expense that the city could save. He also, and again, this is, just information that was given, he also said it's $20,000 to run the pump down by the water, or on Waterworks. And then these projects combined, or the projects alone, their cost would be at $1.8 million for the solar, and then $700,000 below, and that would all be grant money. So just to kind of give you some parameters of what that benefit is, again, it would be a very big undertaking with a lot of coordination from the city, a lot of loose ends, making sure that we're evaluating that land, we're not, like, that we can actually do it, and that we want to do that, and that we don't feel that that land should be allocated for something else. So again, a bit of a homework piece there. One thing that we did bring up to him, so this grant is through, DEQ.
It's, actually through the EPA, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant.
Yep.
And it's billions of dollars, and for Montana, DEQ is the administrator.
Yep. And so we asked him if there were other things that we could potentially tap in on, whether that's for sustainability, recycling, pieces like that here in the area that Lazy M5 has, building more resilient infrastructure.
Schools, I think.
But a lot of it was going to the schools, and it could apply to the recycling centers.
Yeah, so there's other pieces, so he's gonna send us, some information on that grant program.
He's sending it to you.
Yes, correct, he's sending it to me, and then I will share it out. But gonna get some information on that grant, and see, again, I have no problem trying to accumulate information for multiple options, and then if we get shot down on one, we have a backup plan. So instead of wasting that money, we have multiple grants that we could be applying for, and we can pick what we want to utilize that money for, versus trying to scramble all of our eggs to make one omelet. Like, we could just make several egg dishes, 'cause I like that.
Chelsea, we could get a grant for the solar facility.
What was that?
We could get a grant for the solar
Yeah.
facility,
Mhm.
and that would save $66,000 a year just for the solar. I mean, just for
For the electric, yep. And again, I don't have any like verified numbers on this, I don't have bills, but, you know,
I
yes,
know
that is what he estimated on that. He also gathered a bunch of information from Missoula, and they have also done a similar program, but they didn't have batteries to actually store all this, so there's a bit of a struggle tapping in with the current electrical infrastructure. So, again, I think it's a really great opportunity, it's just a matter of, we don't necessarily need to jump on it without doing the homework, because otherwise then we might end up with, you know, over $2 million that we're just like, whoops, and kind of, again, fail forward, and I don't necessarily want to do that too much. So, again, do some homework there. Other piece that we talked about, again, we're gonna be looking into, recycling center as well. So this is kind of an overflow of admin, finance, public works, checking our budget there, and also just checking on the contracts, tonnage, what the usage is, making sure that the services that are being provided are as written in contracts, making sure that if there are areas where we can be saving, we are looking at those avenues. So we're gonna be, Mike's gonna be meeting with Kyle. I think we're planning on kind of trying to gather that information ahead of time and then analyze it. So it's kind of great because she was already working with the recycling, so she's gonna be able to provide, a good chunk of information there in terms of how it was supposed to run, how it's set up, what that process looks like. Then we're gonna just break into numbers and try and break that down. We have a long list of like glass, cardboard, paper, plastic, e-waste, aluminum, and just making sure that it all still fits. and then just really reviewing those contracts and making sure that that's how it's being executed. So, excited to just kind of do some follow-up on that, and then that way we can also kind of provide a year in review after that first year and see if there's anything that needs reassessment. Let's see, we did talk about ordinance 926 and the addressing. That's not something we really had an opportunity to discuss today, but it is going to be on the agenda for us next meeting, next go-around. Again, one thing that's nice with Mike and his experience at GIS, I think that will be very beneficial there. And another thing that we really want to be looking at moving forward is impact fees. So those are requests from the mayor, things that we can be looking at and assessed, because impact fees, we are way behind schedule on, as they have not been assessed since 2007, and they're supposed to be, every 5 years? So, we're gonna work on that one. And I think a big part of looking at that will also just be, look at the budget, see what we cost, and see what we're getting. It all comes down to money eventually.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Of course.
Lonnie brought it to our attention that there is a shortfall
Right.
from Republic Services and, our budget for that, and that is, we collect that from taxpayers, and when taxpayers are delinquent, the city doesn't have the money that is, earmarked for Republic Services, and so there's a shortfall of about $11,000 this year. So we need to, look at ways to address that and maybe have, a little bit of a cushion in the next, cycle, I
Yeah.
guess.
And a
If that-
reserve fund
A reserve,
of some
a
sort.
reserve to cover things like that, and so that needs to happen before the end of August. So that's just something that's, upcoming and should be on our radar that we'll be talking about.
And that amount is growing at a percentage, so
Yeah.
right now it's at 11-ish, but next
It'll be
year,
bigger and bigger.
so we're just gonna it'll keep going.
Thank you for your report.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's it. Oh, sorry, let me take your shirt off.
Will,
I'll take I don't know if I can see that at this meeting. Doug, Sandy just brought up, right now, if you would just be okay going on the committees that Kelly had been currently on?
No problem.
Okay, that, just, so you can have some assignments for
Well,
next time?
I'm really curious to go to these meetings.
Yeah, and you're welcome to
I'm
attend.
kind of out in the dark right now, but that's obviously where you get to get in the nitty-gritty, so
Yeah.
I definitely plan on getting involved there.
And so, yes, you're welcome to attend all of them, but if you would plan on attending land use and planning and, public health and safety were the two committees that she was
and the
on.
times are right on here.
Okay.
Public health and safety is 8 AM and land use and planning is 4 PM.
I did notice, reading through the minutes, that Kelly had been, liaison for the Rural Fire Department Oversight Committee.
And I think that the mayor will have to appoint someone new to that.
Okay.
Is that right, Dave? Is he still there? Or did he go to bed?
I am. I missed which oh, no, I'm here. Although I'm thinking this is how we should do all our council meetings.
And I don't know if anyone
So
else.
did you hear what I had said, Dave?
I heard that Kelly was appointed, but I missed which committee it was, but I figured that, you can restate it, but I figured I could do the research.
It's the Rural Fire Department Oversight Committee. She was just appointed last month,
Reappointed, yeah.
or reappointed last month.
Yeah, and
But he
that,
is
that
the-
probably seems like a really good one to appoint,
Mm-hmm.
to appoint our new member to, with that finance background and getting
I
our
would agree.
to look like theirs.
Okay,
But we'll put that on next time's business.
okay. All right, any other council business to discuss?
The only thing that I thought is, I don't know, again, I brought this up with Jody, and she is the one who says who goes where, but I don't know if it'd be worth considering Doug for admin and finance, just because he does have,
I'm gonna be at
Yeah.
all the meetings
Anyway.
to start with. just to
Yeah.
get-
okay, just to get a feel.
Yeah.
All right. And is that something we can assess later?
You know, your input is
All
always
right, just want to be sure.
valuable too.
Yeah.
That's what
On all
I
of
Yeah,
can go to
we can all
these meetings so I can have input.
Okay,
Or, I-
Oh, wait a second.
Nope.
Oh,
Madam
wait.
Chair?
Okay, wait. Dave? Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I just, we can address this later, but, whereas Doug is now on the council meetings, we ought not to have him go to all of the meetings next time, or we'll exceed our 3. Whether maybe we just need to factor that out, and I don't want to put out there in the public that we're sending more than 4
Even though
people
it's
to
a
those
public
meetings.
meeting?
Yeah, it is a public meeting, and we're probably okay. It's just iffy.
Sandy was at our meeting this morning, right?
Yes.
Our
I
admin
did.
meeting.
Yeah, I did.
Everybody shows up on me.
And if he was an observer, I guess it didn't hurt anything. We'll look into it and make sure we're covered.
Okay, yeah, just like,
Yeah,
Because that'd be great.
yeah, that would be a good.
I know that's why we post them, and whereas we do post agendas, I think we're good, but we haven't made it a requirement for legally sufficient meetings, so they maybe need to be just an observer or sitting back and not participate.
Okay, yeah, if you could clarify that, Dave, before our next one, that'd be great. Please.
I will. My guess is that if we want to go that route, we have to go to full-blown, legally sufficient meeting minutes at those meetings. So council
We do
can look
that.
and weigh about.
We do that, and there's Zoom.
Okay, you're good.
Okay.
I moved to adjourn.
I second. Okay. All right, good. Thank you guys for, at 8 o'clock.
Welcome aboard, yeah. Yes,
Are we watching it? It's like,
No, but yeah, I need to get around to meetings.
Rob sent me a text.
Yeah, definitely. You do it. We take minutes. They're noted,
Yeah.
they're.
And that's the thing, it might be that we need to like have our city procedures changed to where we are taking minutes.
We are.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I like going to other meetings.
Yeah, and we will do that, but right now everyone's taking minutes anyway.
Okay.